it's important to sit with that hunger and recognize what emotions might be showing up in that 10-minute time span. And it's a really simple practice to get into. Many of the people that I kind of coach through this process, they recognize that whether it's in front of a screen or they're, home by themselves or they're behind a screen at work or, driving somewhere, they end up not consuming food because they recognize that they're not hungry. They might be stressed out because they had a really long day that was mentally taxing. Maybe they got into a disagreement with somebody or they're bored, right?
Yeah.
So, like, boredom isn't really an emotion, it's a state of mind. Just like happiness, you allow happiness in your life. Nobody else is responsible for that but you. So it's sitting and learning to be okay with 10 minutes of figuring out what is happening in your immediate landscape to identify, is food a solution for you at this particular time?
Mhm.
Welcome to Cut the Crap with Beth and Matt, the world's #1 no bullshit health and fitness podcast.
Are you ready to cut the crap with your diet and exercise, get strong as fuck, and build a healthy relationship with food? Then you've come to the right place.
Let's go. If you'd like to support us in the podcast, join our Patreon where you get exclusive content, which consists of monthly workouts you can do at home or at the gym, monthly challenges that are either strength, habit, or mindset based, and access to over 100 plus low-calorie, high-protein, family-friendly meals. These are all designed by a professional chef who is certified in nutrition. These recipes are already in MyFitnessPal for easy fucking tracking. New recipes are also added each week.
We believe that fitness is for everyone, so this is our way of getting you started on your health and fitness journey at a price most everyone can afford. So what the fuck are you waiting for? We'll see you in the Patreon.
All right, guys, we have Polly. Polly from Raise the Bar. Is that the name of your gym?
Nope, just the bar.
The Bar. Raise the Bar.
Bar.
That's an event.
That's an event. Actually, and that's also a very good event.
Yes, yes, it
I've
is. I've never
attended
been
that.
to one, but I've spoke at the online one, the recorded one. I did like shortly
Okay.
after the Real Coaches Summit.
Okay.
That's dope.
Yeah.
The gym is the bar. That's like my favorite place to be on a Friday night now,
Well,
The gym.
at the
we were
gym.
gonna
Yeah.
open a tap house next door and call it the gym.
There you go.
Oh, that would be kind of funny, actually.
That's a good niche right there.
Right? How you doing, Polly?
I'm doing good. Training's going well. Coaching's going well. Yeah, it's a good week. And actually, it was funny. Yesterday, I don't know why I mess with my alarm system, but so typically in the mornings I get up like 75 minutes early, so I have the morning to. I turn meditation music on as I'm prepping food and just mentally preparing for my day. There's a lot of mental energy that goes into coaching, as you both know, whether in person, online combination. And I hear Nikki, she's like, "Hey, Paul." And I thought I was in a dream. I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "What time is your class this morning?" I'm like, 6, and I'm half, sleeping. I'm like, "What time is it?" She's like, "It's 5:20." I'm like, "Oh, shit."
Oh,
So, luckily, I had all my stuff prepared the night before. So it's like getting up, throwing my clothes on, brushing my teeth, making my coffee, and then running out the door. So it just felt like this huge rush of like mind fuckery the whole day because I woke up late.
Dude,
I
Pretty
know.
unorthodox for me.
No, that happens. You know what? But a lot of people live their life like that.
that's what I was just gonna
And
say.
we talk about this in our challenges. It's like, okay, how do you wake up in the morning? Like, what do you do? You know what I mean? Because if I wake up like this, like you did today, my whole day is like a fucking shit show.
It's
Yeah.
chaotic. It's
I have
chaotic.
to have like an hour or more to like settle into the day. Like you said, like I get
Yeah.
up, I don't meditate. I go straight for the coffee, but then it's like, okay, I got to post like what's going on, answer some
Yeah.
emails. It just kind of slides me and make my son's breakfast. You know the deal. And a lot of people, they just get up, their alarm goes off, they're like snooze it like 10 million times. They grab their fucking protein shake in a bar and they go out the door. And that's just how they live.
Not even a protein bar or shake.
Right.
It
True.
really having those morning routines is so important. I think it's just as important as a nighttime routine. They really go hand in hand.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't wake up like that this morning. It was yesterday morning because I would be super frazzled. And I'll be clear, I don't like sit and meditate. I have a hard time sitting still. Nikki will attest to this. I've always got to be moving. But
Uh-huh.
I turn meditation music on and that just kind of calms me
Sets the
because when
mood.
I get to the gym, people usually have music on blast and it's like, "Ugh," you know.
That's not
Right.
meditative.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Coming into Disturbed,
Yeah.
holy shit, I tell you what, it's like, let the bodies hit the floor. I'm like, "Really, at 6 a.m., this is what you want? Okay."
Right. Oh my god, that's too funny. So, Holly, why don't you, if you could, introduce yourself, give us a little background of who you are.
Yeah, so, my name's Paul Campbell. People call me Paulie, which I hated as a kid, but I've adapted it since undergrad school. My buddies called me, and it just stuck. I have my master's degree in nutritional science. I've been in the coaching space for about 20 years. I've been with Team Beth Faracco for a little over a year now. It's been an absolute wonderful experience. Learned a lot of different strategies and things working with best population, and I had the opportunity to meet the team a couple weeks ago at a CEU conference in Vegas. I own my own semi-private training facility. It's about 5,000 square feet in Montana City, Montana. I played Division One rugby in undergrad school, and right now I have a pretty large client load in person and online, large relative to me, to a manageable situation, which is wonderful. I'll go on record and say I used to despise running, and now I'm much more involved in the cardiovascular
Love.
system improvement. So I do a lot of mountain biking, trail running. I continue to lift weights 3 to 4 days a week. I retired from professional bodybuilding back in 2020. Now I'm just really all in on sharing my education, continued education, and coaching expertise with like-minded folks that are looking to break through or break free from fad dieting and getting in their own way. So it's been a great transition. The last 3 years has been really a tremendous amount of growth for me as a professional and for the clients that I've been working with. So it's a blessing to be here on this platform and hopefully share some things that will provide tangible takeaways to the audience that might be listening.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited to have you. And I'm thank you for actually reaching out. The topic that you wanted to talk about is something that I think a lot of people need to learn and understand and practice, right? Practice.
Absolutely.
So Polly wants to talk about maintenance and actually transitioning out of tracking calories, which I know Matt
Yeah.
loves. Like,
Let's
it's a
go.
huge component of that.
Yeah.
What, I guess, do you find, Polly, is the most difficult for people when even you mention a maintenance? Like, I guess let's just start there. The maintenance debacle.
I think maintenance can be difficult for a lot of populations that we work with because number one, it's not sexy for a variety of reasons, right? You go onto social media and you're being persuaded to either build muscle or lose body fat. And there's a lot of nuance we can get into, which we're not going to get into today regarding those two goals. I'm going to say one, and we talked about this, Beth, earlier this week with the team is people want to lose body fat, but they haven't improved their physique enough to merit going into fat loss, right? They haven't put their time and energy into improving strength, hypertrophy, joint, bone, ligament, tendon health to really focus
Hmm.
on the fat loss component.
Right.
And whether you're currently building in a building phase or in a maintenance phase or in a fat loss phase, maintenance isn't sexy for a variety of reasons. Number one is people don't like to tread water. People don't like to, I think people begin to be uneasy with not having moving targets. And as a coach, this is probably one of the most difficult areas to coach a client through is maintenance. And one of the main reasons for that is I'll say anecdotally from my experience, as a coach, we like to sometimes create moving targets, specific takeaways for clients to focus on that are driven by them autonomously, whether that's fat loss, muscle gain, et cetera. And so in a maintenance phase, you're really not changing your energy intake at all, right?
Mhm.
And I think there's a catch. In order to be a candidate for maintenance, it's important that you understand energy balance, you understand nourishing your body for what it needs for the goal at hand. And you need to be well versed and skilled in tracking, right? Because maintenance doesn't necessarily mean you need to be tracking food. I actually had a really good check in yesterday with a client. They're traveling to London next week for 7 days for work. And he is currently in a fat loss phase. And I was talking with him yesterday and I'm like, well, let's set you up for success here. Number one, he knows how to track really well. He's very compliant. Number two, the resistance training and the steps are second nature to this client. So to set this client up for success, I basically explained to him, like, you've been doing well, the scale's been trending down, but let's set you up for success while you're overseas. So while you're overseas, let's not track. And there's a variety of things that are in favor going to London. Their portion sizes relative to the American portion sizes are significantly smaller. So by default, you're probably going to be consuming less calories, even if you're not tracking, and you're not worried about performing for your professional career and having the tracking mechanism play a role. You're not going to have your scale, your weight scale, or your food scale. The barcode reader might not work. It adds a lot of extra hoops to jump through that aren't necessarily something that we need to focus on. So let's take this week to step away from tracking and use the tools that you've built over the last couple of years through your muscle building, through your maintaining, because we've done maintenance phases, and through your fat loss, and implement those while you're gone. And my guess is when you come back, due to the culture over in London, that you're probably going to be relatively close to the same weight you were when you left.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
because the other component of that too is the movement piece, right? And that's
Right.
a really big piece of maintenance. But then talking about overseas too, that's one thing we hear so often is like, oh, it's the food because I went over there and I lost weight and I ate all this food. I ate desserts. And it's like, yeah, but you also doubled your steps. I
Correct.
actually on TikTok there was this comment that it was being made. So I made a video about people not they need to stop eating 1,200 calories. And the argument was, well, I'm sedentary. I'm like, okay, so don't be sedentary, right? That's the easy solution to that problem right there. And I'm like, listen, the average American is moving 3 to 4 thousand steps a day. And I looked it up over in Europe, it's 5 to 6 thousand steps per day. And it's because their cities are so much more walkable and they have public
Mm.
transportation and we're driving everywhere. We're sitting and doing it. And so yeah, just a little sidebar there.
Yeah. So true, Matt.
Yeah, and that's kind of hit the nail on the head. Generally, when whether you're overseas or not, when people are on vacation, looking at the data from all of the clients that I've worked with, by default, their steps generally increase by about 30%,
Hmm.
right? So even if you
Mhm.
ate the same
Solid.
amount of food or at maintenance, you're by default moving more than you would, from your day-to-day activities, going to work, running kids around, whatever the case might be.
Mhm.
So, the main takeaway for like travel, perhaps in this specific context, is if you are in a fat loss phase and you're traveling, I would strongly encourage you, if you feel confident in your ability to track or mentally take note, and I'll say be mindful, even though I hate that word because it's been, I think, raked over the
It's like,
coals.
what does that even mean?
Yeah, because
Hey, I'm gonna
mindful
take
and weight
offense to
loss,
this
they're not.
now.
Yeah, mindful and weight loss are not synonymous, and I think people have that, "Oh, I eat mindfully," or "I eat clean." It's like, well, yeah,
Right.
okay, but you're still eating too much, right? So we need to quantify how much you're eating. So assuming that all those ducks are in a row, if you're going on vacation or doing something like that, unless you're stepping on a bodybuilding stage or competing in something of that nature where your physique is being judged, take a break from tracking for a week. It's a great psychological break, but it's also providing you an opportunity to, I think, be more in tune with your hunger cues, your environment, what's happening, social environment. You probably are eating out more frequently as a traveler. So it gives you the opportunity to try different foods that you may not be exposed to in different cultures in your hometown. And it really gives you an opportunity to practice the skill set that you've been working on as a client or a coach, if it's applicable, to put those things essentially into practice and test them. So
Yeah.
it's an opportunity. It's not a constraint. And I think kind of looking at it through that lens can help break down some of those barriers that people have, or if they're nervous about traveling and gaining weight. And the reality is, if you're traveling by planes, trains, and automobiles, you're going to be sedentary for a period of time, and there's probably going to be some fluid fluctuation from being in a seated position for long periods of time. But generally, a good rule of thumb when I'm looking at a client's weight when they return from travel, if it's within like 2 to 3 pounds of when they left, they probably ate relatively similar in terms of total calories to what they were when they were, maybe back in their home environment.
Mhm.
And the magic happens at maintenance, right? Because that's the whole Rochambeau for this podcast is, if you're looking to transition away from tracking to get to a space of maintenance, and that is where the magic happens. That's where you can really sharpen your skills as an individual to learn how to fuel your body appropriately. So,
Agreed.
kind of what I want to transition into here is how do you transition away from tracking? What do people recommend? And for me as a coach, and I've practiced this on my own, I've had other clients practice this. We can look at all the data and the research in the world, but those are good bearings for coaches to kind of gather guidelines. But at the end of the day, your clients aren't data. They're not spreadsheets. They're not percentages. They're human beings. And there's a lot of context individually with each different client that you might be working with. So I'm going to preface this with if you've successfully participated in a fat loss program, a maintenance program, or a muscle build program, and you're looking to transition away from tracking, assuming those ducks are in a row and you're really sound with your tracking skills and ability, one of the main things I recommend as a first step is I still would, want people to track like their fat intake, right? Like your peanut butters, your oils, because those are more calorically dense, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Per gram, it's about double, it's a little over double of that of carbs and proteins.
Yeah.
And so really what I do is, of course, we recommend eat fruits and vegetables. You can eat more of them and get less calories as a result of that. So let's start with that low hanging fruit. If like you like salad, like, I do want you to track your salad dressing, any croutons you might throw on. Lean proteins, I would say you could probably get away from tracking them. I'll circle back to Weight Watchers if you guys remind me of some of the strategies they use, which I agree with some of them. But I recommend transitioning away from tracking like your non-starchy fruits and vegetables, right? Because they're low in calorie by default.
Mhm.
You can eat more of them to feel more satiated. And if you're prioritizing satisfying that hunger scale, increasing your green beans or broccolis or leafy vegetables in your salads, you're probably unlikely to overeat on calories in those departments, right?
Mhm.
I
So
love that you mentioned the hunger scale because that really helps you get in touch with both your hunger and your satiety, the opposite
Yeah.
spectrum. People don't realize how big of a spectrum hunger and fullness really is. They're so used when they're dieting, right? And the way they've always dieted in the past with lifelong dieters, yo-yo dieting, is they're either extremely hungry or they're they're overly
Right.
full. They're stuffed
Right.
because they
yeah,
binged or they overate. They don't know the in between, the maintenance piece of it. So I love that.
Mhm.
right. And that's another thing that I think is important is to, and this is a skill set and strategy that I work with clients often is hunger is not an emergency. If you have a cell phone, you probably have access to food to some capacity. So food sovereignty most likely isn't going to be an issue. In some cases, it will. But if you're hungry, it's okay to sit for like 5 or 10 minutes and pay attention to why are you hungry? Is it because you're at a restaurant and all of your friends are ordering alcohol, the greasy burgers, the fried foods, because that can stimulate a hunger response, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
And is that causing you or influencing your decision on what to order? If you're at home, eating in front of screens or behind the windshield, those are two dominant areas where I think people mindlessly eat. So before you start throwing things in your suck hole, it's important to sit with that hunger and recognize what emotions might be showing up in that 10-minute time span. And it's a really simple practice to get into. Many of the people that I kind of coach through this process, they recognize that whether it's in front of a screen or they're, home by themselves or they're behind a screen at work or, driving somewhere, they end up not consuming food because they recognize that they're not hungry. They might be stressed out because they had a really long day that was mentally taxing. Maybe they got into a disagreement with somebody or they're bored, right?
Yeah.
So like boredom isn't really an emotion, it's a state of mind. Just like happiness, you allow happiness in your life. Nobody else is responsible for that but you. So it's sitting and learning to be okay with 10 minutes of figuring out what is happening in your immediate landscape to identify, is food a solution for you at this particular time?
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
some people it is because they truly are hungry. And when we were at the coaching summit a couple weeks ago, Joey Munoz, he puts a lot of emphasis on structure. If we think about how our days are structured, they're very similar day to day, Monday through Friday, right? Weekends are generally different for most of us. But creating structure, if we have similar meal times throughout the day, learning to eat at those meal times, and generally you'll let your hunger cues decide what times of day you eat. And once
Mhm.
you have that framework set, doing the reverse engineering and paying attention to hunger cues can actually be a very simplistic process.
Yeah.
And it a lot of times will eliminate snacking for people.
Yep.
And,
Mhm.
snacks, let's say you're consuming 300 calories of snacks in one sitting. We're creatures of habit, so it's probably happening most days of the week. Well, let's take 300 calories each day over 7 days a week. That's 2,100 additional calories you're consuming. That is significant. That is enough to create no fat loss, right? That's enough to see a degradation in
That's enough for them to say, "I'm doing everything right, but I'm not seeing results."
Nothing is working.
Yeah.
Like I say, I love that you're describing mindful eating, is what you're doing, and I
Yeah.
know you said you hated that word mindful, but I'm like, "We're talking about
Yeah.
mindful eating, yay."
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
intuitive or whatever adjective you want to use, I suppose. Like it's all the same. It's all packaged like these fancy marketing phrases. But the reality is you need to act like a fucking adult, sit down for
Yes.
5 or 10 minutes, take a time out and
Yeah.
understand,
Time out.
really get into, yeah, really try to understand why are you hungry. It's probably similar times of the day that you're getting these false hunger cues that are
Mhm.
stimulated by an external motivator or system that's creating this urge to satisfy that need with food.
Yeah.
Yeah, for like many of my clients, it's middle of the afternoon in the office, that
Yeah.
30 to 4 p.m. stretch.
It's that
Ravenous, right?
they need
Not
to,
actually
instead of being reactive, they need to pause. Like the power of the pause. A lot of people, like you said, they don't be like, okay, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and understand, like, why am I feeling this way?
yeah.
Because awareness is key, right? If you can't change what you're not aware of, and most people
It's like
just
the first step of
fly
behavior
right through
change.
that. Yeah.
Well said.
So yeah, I think if you've been tracking for a while and you've seen and you've successfully accomplished fat loss and you're looking to kind of transition away from tracking, because let's be honest, like I tracked for 10 years straight. I was burnt out. And I actually just made a reel about it today. I have to go back and tag you, Beth. But it talked about, and this is kind of a little bit of a sidetrack. People ask me, did you get into running to lose weight? Fuck no.
Mm.
I got into running because I
Damn
agreed
it.
to, right? One of my clients, she lost like 45 pounds. She's in the shape of her life. And she's like, hey, do you want to do a half marathon? So that's why I initially started running. And I'm continuing to run
Hmm.
That's cool.
be- because I want to improve my cardiovascular system. If I want to improve my muscle size, strength, bone density, I participate in resistance training. Now, that's not to say that some body composition changes can't happen as a result of being involved in those modalities of exercise or,
Right.
the psychological, the meditation, the mind,
Yeah.
taking 10 minutes to pause. You want to improve that particular system that you're working on. And for most people, they're already involved in one or more of those modalities: meditation, cardiovascular work, or resistance training. If you want to improve your physique, it's going to be heavily emphasized that you focus on the nutrition component to improve that system, right? And so you don't get into exercise necessarily to change your body composition. It can help. I think the return on investment is nominal to what it is when you start to focus on the nutrition
Right.
component.
Nutrition is a driver of almost pretty much any fitness performance goal, body composition
Right.
goal, sure.
Right, and it can have a trickle down effect for the psychological component. A great example is, when you eat really well, nutrient dense foods, whole foods, one ingredient foods, and then maybe have you know a meal out to eat, or you eat something abstract from your normal dietary intake. It tastes like shit. It tastes terrible.
Too
Um,
sweet, too salty.
Yeah.
yeah,
Overpowering.
yeah, 100%. And a lot of that comes from like the protein bars, artificial sweeteners, which are not. I want to preface this with artificial sweeteners have a time and place. You will notice how much better fruits and vegetables taste as a result of perhaps limiting some of the artificial sweeteners that you're
Absolutely.
consuming. Now, I love Diet Coke. I love Coke Zero. I love diet sodas. I don't drink them every day, but I do use them as a tool.
Right.
Hmm.
But they don't taste as for me personally, they don't taste as good on my palate because I'm eating 95% of my foods are whole foods. They're nutrient dense
Yes.
foods. They have vitamins, minerals. They have things that you're providing your body, and as a result, you're going to feel better. You're going to perform better. You're going to think better.
This is
Hmm.
Right?
why literally what we try to get people to understand when it comes to artificial sweeteners, especially when we talk out about them, right? Like when we're saying
Yeah.
they aren't the problem. It's what you just described, right? Like when we want people to eat whole foods most of the time, and then when
Right.
you do have the artificial sweeteners, it's no big fucking deal. And then you may not even like it anyway because you're using it, like for me, artificial sweeteners, I mean, they're so like they're what? Some of them are 30 times sweeter than sugar.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
and so, like you said, and we've talked about this, I think, on the podcast before. Your taste buds are just
Hmm.
crazy because they don't know what real food actually tastes like. So, yeah, of course, you
Yeah.
don't like
Yep.
vegetables,
And you're I don't like water. And then they're drinking fucking 10 Crystal Light packets a day.
artificial sweetener,
It's
right?
like
Yeah,
I couldn't I do like the taste of water, and sometimes I'll flavor it with like I have the True Lemon and all that stuff, but if I have too many like Crystal Light packets, it's just like I
it's
can't do
overbearing.
it. It's
Yeah,
just it's too overwhelming. It's
like
too
Paulie
much.
said,
Yep.
you have to be in a fucking adult and drink like
Like drink your
earlier,
fucking
drink your
water, you know what I'm
water,
saying? But those help me drink water, Beth.
and
Well,
that's
that's because
fine,
that's
right? But don't just drink all fucking Mio, right? Like you
yeah,
just said,
right.
Yeah.
fuck,
Yes.
have a glass of water.
8 Quest bars a day, fucking 4 low carb wraps.
And
No
there's a
water,
time and
you have no
place to
sensation
use
of hunger.
those,
Exactly.
Yes,
right?
Agree.
exactly. Hmm.
And that's kind of the cool part about maintenance is it kind of opens, I'll say, Pandora's box to enjoying, I'll say, higher quantities of food, right?
Mhm.
Because essentially maintenance is you're consuming a calorie amount, you're quantifying a calorie amount that's appropriate for you as an individual that allows you to maintain your weight, right? But
Mhm.
people think they're gonna in a maintenance phase, you're gonna maintain the exact weight that like
Right.
220 and it's
Ooh,
never gonna change.
yeah, let's talk about that.
Maintenance,
Let's
This is what everyone needs to hear, is that your end dieting weight is not your maintenance weight. So, Polly, could you, help people understand why their weight goes up? And do you know, like, between how many pounds that someone may fluctuate during maintenance?
yeah, so let's say, somebody lost 15% of their total body weight, right?
Mhm.
And they're like, I'm ready to go into maintenance phase. So there are equations that you can use.
Ooh.
And equations are, we're not going to get into those today for a number of reasons because there's a dozen of them, right? And I think people spend too much time on looking at
Equations?
equations, right? They're an
Yes.
estimate. They're getting you,
It's like using 5 different fat loss calculators. Yeah,
Right, and
right.
never actually using one.
yeah,
Yeah, you're basically throwing a baseball at the broadside of a barn to hit it, right? From
Mhm.
10 feet away to give you a footprint of the sand of where to start.
right.
I think people are really biased perhaps when they're looking at equations because they want to find an equation that gives them the highest calorie amount to start with, which I don't disagree with. You want to eat as much food as you can and see weight loss, specifically fat loss, right? That's the goal. But the cool part is you can use any calorie estimator to figure out where you need to be for fat loss and test it. If you're losing weight too quickly, you can always
Mhm.
bump your calories up. So
Right.
that's besides the point. So getting back to, okay, you're at the end of a fat loss phase, you've lost 15% of your body weight. Let's say you're consuming 1,500 calories in this example. I would probably suggest to that client bumping their calories about 10 to 15% from their baseline of their finished fat loss phase. So 1,500 calories, I might bump them up to what's that, 150 extra calories. So it's between 16 and 1,700
1650.
calories. Yep, give them a range. As a byproduct of bumping up to maintenance, you're less likely to, I don't want to say binge because that's not necessarily an appropriate way to look at it, but you're less likely to not be
Overeat?
compliant or overeat because now you're eating more food. 200 calories doesn't seem like a lot, but in fruits and vegetables,
Nutrient
it's
dense foods
it's a
Mhm.
ton
Yeah.
of food,
and candy
right?
with a bunch of artificial sweeteners and stuff. No,
Right. You go to 2 samples at the Costco store, have 2 samples, there's your 200 calories right there. So it depends on how you spend those calories.
Right.
So, okay, you're 16 to 1,700 calories. Let's start there. Now your protein will remain probably the same.
Yeah.
As your calories increase, you might increase trace proteins through like your oatmeals, some vegetables, some
More
fats
so
like
as a
peanut butter.
byproduct.
Yep, they're just trace proteins, and a lot of times they're incomplete proteins as well.
Yeah.
So you might see a artificial bump in your protein, not a huge deal. Protein goal is still relatively the same. You're going to adjust primarily your carbon fat intake, right?
Mhm.
As a result of going into maintenance. And so, from a weight gain standpoint, what can you expect? Well, that depends. Are you a female? Are you still having your menstrual cycle? Generally, when you're in a fat loss phase and we're working with female clients that still experience their cycle, we pay more attention to what happens to their body weight relative to their cycle, like pre-cycle and throughout their 3 phases of a cycle in the end. And a lot of times as client, we're able to kind of pinpoint, okay, your weight went up 2 pounds this week, your cycle starts in 3 days. So we know there's an artificial bump in weight prior to their cycle starting. So that can influence when you go to maintenance. Your weight might bump up a little bit more if you're still experiencing your cycle. That category aside, if you start consuming more starchy carbohydrates, which is fine, what white rice, brown rice, potatoes, etc., you're going to end up storing more water, right?
Yep.
Because water will transport the carbohydrate into your muscle cell. And
Glycogen
just like
stores.
creatine, that's exactly where you want water stored, is in your muscle cell.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you're going to see a slight bump in weight, perhaps, but you also might experience a little bit of a weight drop. Why does that happen? Well, as you increase your calorie intake slightly, you might experience more non-exercise activity thermogenesis throughout the day. These are things you don't think about throughout the day. They're not intentional. Like right now, I'm talking with my hands a lot. That's considered fidgeting. My
Mhm.
feet bounce when I'm sitting at a desk. That's fidgeting. It's not
Yep.
intentional. It's you don't even think about it.
It's that
So
neat.
it's a
Yeah.
neat, which neat accounts for up to 20% of your calorie expenditure for the day. So it's significant. It's
Mhm.
15% more than going to the gym for an hour, right? So
Right.
Which is what people
it's
get wrong.
Yeah.
correct.
Drastically wrong.
100%.
It's the other way
So
around for most people.
yep. So we bump the calories up 1,700 calories, and we hold there for a minimum in how I like to do it is 14 days, 2 weeks.
Mhm.
You're consistent every single day, and yeah, you might be 1750 one day, you might be 1575 the next. As long as you're within that ballpark, I think that's reasonable to gather some data and assessment and make changes. So if this client comes back in 2 weeks and their weight's, within a pound or half a pound up or down of
Mhm.
when they ended their fat loss phase, we'll take a check-in and inventory of how is your performance at the gym? Do you feel like, you're getting stronger? Have you regressed in anything? How is your sleep? How is your mood? How's your libido? How's your cognitive brain function? Do you feel like you're performing better if, like you're an engineer and you got to do a bunch of engineering shit, whatever the case might be. So we collect feedback from the client as a result of increasing their calories. If everything's going well, they're feeling good, their performance is going great, maybe they're looking at, increasing their activity for whatever reason, right? Increasing mileage for an event, or maybe they're adding another resistance training day, or maybe they're just keeping everything the same. We'll have a conversation. How would you feel about bumping your calories up, maybe 10 more percent, right? So now at 16, 1700 calories, now we might be at closer to like 18 to 1900 calories.
Mhm.
So it's this methodical adjustment based on primarily how the client is feeling
Mhm.
physically and mentally, and then secondary to that is what is their weight doing, right? If a client is at 1,500 calories and bump up to 1,700, their weight shoots up 5, 6 pounds. Well, that tells me that they probably weren't compliant, or we
Right.
just hold it for another week or so to see what happens as a result,
Mhm.
right? Did their meal structures change? Are they eating more food before bed, which is creating a false positive in the scale increase the next morning
Right.
possible?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a elevator pitch as to perhaps how to approach maintenance after a fat loss phase. The contrary to that, if you're a client looking to, and I know we do this with all vast majority of our clients coming in working with coaches, we want them to be successful. So we don't give them 20 different targets to aim for because they're going to be overwhelmed. We might just focus on, hit your protein or whatever. So if you're just getting into coaching and you're looking to experience fat loss, we might just have you track your food without changing any of your current behaviors to identify not only how many calories are you consuming, but to get some data points as to like, do we need to focus on calorie intake right now? Is that a priority? Maybe it's
Okay.
protein, maybe it's steps.
Yeah.
What is it that we need to focus on that you can confidently prioritize this week?
Yeah.
Uh,
I like that strategy of taking like a 1 to 2 week observation period when somebody's first starting
Yeah.
with you to, but like, what's the rush? We're in this for the long haul. If we're working together, so let's do this right and not just jump into something and start slashing calories or just just document everything you're doing for me. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Start there.
right. Because the reality is, let's say we get a client in and they track their food and they're eating 1,800 calories and they weigh 200 pounds and it's a male and they haven't been really lifting weights consistently or getting their steps in. I probably won't intentionally put them in a calorie deficit. I'll have them track
Yeah.
their food. And I know you guys would agree with this. Most everybody that has come in as a client, the one macronutrient that they haven't prioritized, which is why they're hiring us as coaches, is protein. So
Mhm.
Hmm.
we can keep your calories the exact same,
Up the protein.
but increase your protein intake, and you're probably going to see some remarkable body composition changes within, I'll say 6 to 12 weeks without even making any changes to your food. And that's a fantastic place to be. You come in,
There's research to support that too.
yeah, because
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm.
protein requires more energy to break down through the digestive process.
Yeah.
It helps with obviously supporting lean body mass, recovery, et cetera. And so
Hmm.
if we take somebody that's not been really resistance training consistently and we start increasing maybe frequency at a dose that they can adhere to and the intensity slowly throughout the next 6 to 12 weeks, they're probably going to see body composition changes. So imagine that coming into coaching, we're not cutting your calories. We're just saying, hey, let's work toward, getting you over 100 grams of protein, which, for a lot of Americans is not
That's it.
being hit. I think it's like 60 grams,
That would be
right?
a big improvement for if
Oh
we
yeah.
average that. Yeah.
I see it every
Oh my
week with
God.
clients. That's the
Yeah.
one thing we
50 or
focus on is
60 is pretty
protein.
typical, and that's high.
47. I was at my hair salon the other day and my hairstylist's mom came in and she was talking about stuff. I'm tracking my calories and I just don't know what's, the whole I don't know what's happening. So I said, let me take a look at your food log. And I said, is this all the protein you got today? 47 grams
Yeah.
for the
But
fucking day.
and that's crazy low, and that's like the
So
bare
low.
minimum amount, I think, for the recommended amount to not wither
Yeah.
away. Like,
Yeah.
we don't wanna just
Yeah.
not wither away, we wanna fucking thrive here, y'all.
Right.
Yeah.
People are
Right.
just one thing they do track, though, and track really well is fucking carbs. Everybody knows how many carbs are in everything, and they're they're really
Yeah.
diligent about that for decades.
Not even to mention the fact that they will have less sugar cravings. So they will probably end up eating less highly palatable foods like
Yep.
they used to.
Protein's kind of like that first domino, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you can hit your protein intake, most clients that I've worked with that track their food initially, we work up to triple their current protein intake, double to triple,
Wow.
somewhere in that range, right? So
Depending
from
where it's
60
at.
grams, we work up to 120, 180, and it's all relative to their lean body mass, body weight, et
Right.
cetera. But as a byproduct, you hit that first domino, you're more satiated, you're eating less calories, you're building muscle, you're maintaining muscle. So like all these positive effects
Yeah.
happen just
Yep.
from simply focusing on one macronutrient.
Yep.
Magic macronutrient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. But that's imagine if you're frustrated right now and you're listening to this and you're not working with coach and you don't know where to start, just start tracking your protein intake.
Hmm.
Yes.
And
What's a
if
good
you find
amount for someone to start? If you don't mind, like giving, like I guess, like a calculation, because I know people will be like, "Well, how do I figure out how much protein I need, Polly?"
so there's two tangible takeaways here. You're uh, if you're 150 pounds and your goal is to be 120 pounds, set it at your goal body weight. That's
Okay.
one really simple way to do it. Number two is zero 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. So you take your total body weight and multiply that by zero 0.8. And that can
Okay.
give you generally a good ballpark. If you're under 100 grams, you can use those calculations that I just provided, but just know if you're consuming, I'll say let's just say 60 grams of protein. And based on the calculations I gave you, your goal is like 150. It's probably going to be very difficult for you for the next 4 weeks to hit 150. So aim for over 100.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anybody that's under 100 that works with me, the goal is let's get you just over 100 grams of protein a day,
I agree.
because people are going to be so full and satiated from focusing on your
Yeah.
lean proteins, assuming you're not eating,
Like
fucking
Kodiak
Quest
cake
bars
pancakes. Like
and
don't stay get the whole foods, not the
yeah,
boxed fucking oatmeal, high protein, Kodiak cakes,
Not
like
up
you
with the
said,
marketing of protein,
Quest
man.
bars. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not the protein we're talking about. Those are good supplemental proteins when you're struggling, but really try to get those whole food proteins in first.
Yeah.
yeah. And if it's really a challenge for you, we listened to a presentation about GL1Ps, and they came out with this. I don't remember the brand, but it's a new protein. It looks like a 5-hour energy and has 23
Oh
grams of
yeah, that
protein.
stuff is great.
That serves a time and place. And
Genius,
if
the genius shot.
the Genius Shot. Yep. Thank you. Protein shakes. Ideally, if you're in a fat loss phase, you're probably not consuming hardly any protein or liquid protein content. It's mostly whole foods because, right, the goal then becomes appetite regulation. And so,
Hmm.
planning one of those 5 ounce,
Which a
23
shake
gram
doesn't do.
protein Genius protein shots is probably not going to keep you satiated like a chicken breast would, right?
Right.
And I know
Yeah.
Weight Watchers,
'Cause
I'll come
we want
back
to
to
chew
the
our food.
100%. Chew it slowly, which is something I struggle with. And that's
Same.
due to a factory job when I had a 10-minute lunch and I had to shovel as much food in my mouth
I
as I
grew up in a
could,
family
but
of
that's
5,
besides the
so
point. But
Now, did you say you grew up in a family of 5? Does that mean you had to, like, get in what you could before
yeah,
everyone finished it?
yeah,
Got it.
yep.
did you guys have a dinner bell?
Not quite, not quite.
For those of you who are familiar with Weight Watchers, they actually had some really, I think, sound advice, and I think they were ahead of their time in some degree. If people are really struggling with hunger, it's really difficult to store excess protein as body fat. But
Mhm.
that's based on you understanding that, number one, like peanut butter is not a protein source. Like that's
Right.
trace proteins. It's primarily a fat, and you can figure that out by simply looking at the ingredient or the nutrition label. It's got like 6 or 7 grams of protein and it has 18 grams of fat per serving. So that's more of a fat dense food than a protein dense food. It's got some trace carbs in there too. So, if clients are really hungry on a fat loss phase and the proteins they're consuming aren't satiating, we'll look at their diary. Okay, well, let's get rid of 3 fucking shakes per day. That's nonsense and it's expensive. Let's
Yeah.
Mhm.
focus on incorporating whole foods. So if you go over your protein goal, I would say that that's probably okay, assuming you're getting it from lean sources like your chicken breasts, your turkey breasts, your 97% lean beef, not
Mhm.
8317. So there's context to proteins to consume if you want to increase your protein intake that might increase your overall calorie consumption,
Got
right?
it.
And
Definitely.
so when we're going back and looking at maintenance, I talked about if you're wanting to step away from tracking, if you have quality protein sources in place and portion sizes, like the size of your palm, that's a pretty good reference for most people.
Mhm.
If you're not tracking, chicken breast the size of your palm, right? We're probably not going to have you track protein, right? So every time you eat, you're prioritizing protein. That's the first macronutrient you're looking to put on your plate.
Build your meals around protein.
Yeah.
Yep. And then your non-starchy vegetables, non-starchy fruits. Okay, let's not track those, but I still want you tracking like your fats, your oils, your starchy carbs, like your brown rice, white rice, potatoes, things of that nature, to really kind of, and it's important that when you are tracking, that you understand and you pay attention to what portion sizes look like. And there's an exercise that I want everybody to practice that's listening to this. And I did
Oh,
this
we
with
love
some
homework.
dietitians at the
Yeah.
clinic that I used to work for, is I want you to scoop out of a peanut butter jar, or even Nutella, right? I eat Nutella every morning on my toast. It's wonderful. I never used to like Nutella. That's besides the point.
I'm not a Nutella guy.
On fresh sourdough, it's the tops. I tell
Ah,
you.
Okay, I'll have to
okay.
try
Yeah,
that.
that's my pre-workout meal, the protein shake.
So
That's what I do for me. I'm not recommending people do
Yeah.
that for them unless they really like it. But the test essentially is to guess what a serving of protein is, weigh it out,
Hmm.
and then weigh out what an actual serving is and put them side by side to see how close you actually are,
Okay.
right? Because there's different ways to measure food, and I'm very specific when I work with clients. I don't want you to measure your food using cups, teaspoons, etc. I want you to use the scale in grams or ounces, right? And I had a client that was eating Kodiak cakes, and I'm like, "How are you measuring this?" So he's like, "You're using a measuring cup." I'm like, "All right, I want you to take the measuring cup based on what it says and weigh it out." It was completely different. He was getting almost 30% more than what the actual weight would have been by
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
a cup, right? And our eyes are bigger than our stomach, so
And we're also just
quantity
terrible at
wise,
being honest with ourselves about how big
Terrible.
our portions actually
100%.
are.
Oh, yeah.
100%. So try that test with peanut butter or Nutella or even oil
Mhm.
and
Something that's
guess what.
calorically dense like that.
Yep. And see how close you are. And the dietitians that I worked with in the clinic, they all failed miserably. It was kind of comical. I did it and I wasn't close either. So
Yeah.
it's exceptionally difficult to do.
Yeah.
But that can be a great test for you. And you can do that with like potatoes or rice to kind of get an
Mhm.
idea of like, all right, am I good at guessing these things that are more calorically
That's
dense?
such a good test for people to do. Honestly, I don't know why I would have never thought of that.
To test yourself like that?
Sounds so basic, right? You know what I
And
Yeah.
mean?
it's simple to
It's so
do.
simple. Yeah.
And most of you are gonna be disappointed when you try it because your peanut butter is probably gonna
Yeah.
be 400 calories or 300
Yeah.
calories versus like
Right, and it's
so
fucking rude. It's like, "Come on now, something that tastes this good
I
has
know.
this many
Matt
calories?"
loves his fucking peanut butter.
I go through so much peanut
right.
butter, but I'm also I
But
don't give a fuck about weight loss for myself personally. That's not a goal of mine right
Exactly.
now.
Exactly.
So, another sneaky one too, this just popped up on my memories of a video I made a few years ago is, the cooking oils, the spray oils, right? Like,
Mhm.
a whole can of them
Damn.
is actually yeah, it's like 1,600 calories for the whole can, but 1 serving is 0 calories, and it's like, "Well, how does that work?"
Nothing is, I think, truly 0 calorie. I think
Right.
Right.
there's variances with the FDA, but like a serving size is a quarter second spray. So if you look at the serving size, it's like that's it.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting there for 10 seconds greasing the shit out of your pan, like you're getting a fuckload of
Definitely
calories
not
there.
0 calories, yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, so imagine being off 200 calories with your oils or peanut butters every day. Again, over the course of 7 days, that interest compounds and that can negatively impact the process.
Or even if you do that multiple times a day, like many people probably
Correct.
are, right? Like, now
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
really trying to swim up a creek with no paddle, right?
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting, and the cool part about maintenance is you can always check yourself. I
Right.
just post Yeah, I posted a reel about an hour ago. So I had taken like a 2-year no, since 2020, almost a 5-year hiatus from tracking consistently. I would do it
Mhm.
intermittently and I'm like, fuck this, I don't want to do it. I was burnt out. But since February, I've been tracking more diligently. So you can all there's checks and balances. Tracking isn't a life sentence, but it's a great tool to use to help you kind of sharpen and maybe find your new homeostasis or kind of keep you in that new area that you want to maintain. And
Agreed.
maintenance for
Great tool.
people,
Mhm.
yeah. And for some of you, if you step away from tracking for an extended period of time and you notice, okay, I'm kind of regressing from maintenance, you could probably get back to tracking for like a month or two consistently and then transition away again from it.
Yeah.
I can actually
It's a
attest to
tool.
that, man. I did
Mhm.
this something like that last year. I'm the same. I haven't tracked
That's
in
right. You did. That's
consistently
right.
in a few years. I used to be full blown macros. I tracked macros for years. Now I just eat mindfully now. But last year, especially as I was ramping up my running, I really got into running
Mhm.
last year, and I was losing weight, and I didn't want to lose weight. It's like, well, I thought I was eating a lot of food, and I was,
Mhm.
but I still needed more. So that's why I tracked calories for a week, and I was like, wow, I'm eating 4,000 calories a day, and I'm still losing weight. So I knew I needed to eat even more. So
Yep.
that's a good use case for that.
Yeah.
That's You can shut up with the 4,000 calories.
I know. Fuck off, Matt. It's fucking
I, I
4,000 calories.
I'm running half marathons and shit, so that's why.
And I do want to point out that you said you didn't get into running to lose weight. That's
Correct.
important to because I talked
Now,
about
I've
that
made that
earlier,
mistake
right?
before though, dude. Actually, years ago when I first started my weight loss journey, I did do that. And I
Same.
fucking hated running. And I've talked about that so much. And then now as I matured and just grew, I loved running for other reasons now.
And maintenance is I shared a story the other day. Maintenance is generally gonna be a desired I'll say body composition, right?
Yes.
Where I'll say you look your best or most sustainable, and for most people, that's not single digit body fat. That's
Right.
unrealistic. You look and perform your best. I think people get so caught up in what they
Yes.
see in the mirror, and they
Yeah.
totally don't pay attention to how they perform. And this is a conversation I have with people. And I think we talked about this on our call this week, Beth, where, a client comes to you and they're like, I want to lose 50 pounds. Well,
Mhm.
what if we got you 25 pounds of fat loss and you feel your best? Would that be,
Mhm.
how would you feel about that? And most clients are open minded to that. So
Yeah.
don't be so fixated on what the scale says. And if you've been doing it
Mhm.
long enough, like you'll know that ideally this body weight is where I perform my best. So
Yeah. Yeah.
your perception of reality and fantasy land are generally going to be not on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're going to be, one might, the reality is probably in the middle of the spectrum. The fantasy world is going to be on the far end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So being okay with perhaps maybe not being chiseled because you're not going to perform well.
I
Right.
can
And
attest
then
to
you're going to
that.
be
That's
miserable.
literally one thing I say all the time is
Yeah.
like, I don't want to have six pack abs. I've done that. I've had that before, and I was definitely my lowest weight, but I wasn't my happiest or my healthiest. And I wasn't performing my best either. I remember how badly when I was doing the macro tracking and I got down to my leanest, how badly I felt when I was strength training. I was like, man, I just want to, I like this. So then I went off the other end and I started powerlifting. I was like, fuck this. I rebelled against macros and the bodybuilding splits and stuff. I started powerlifting and eating all the food, But yeah, I wanted to chime in too. I think it's really, and you kind of just said this, Paul. It's also important to have the goals outside of your body weight, right? Like, and that's really what maintenance I think is really good for, is helping you explore some really cool things that you can do with your body, like performance based goals, running, doing a pull
Yep.
up, chin up, or fucking
Mhm.
whatever.
Yep. And then also activities of daily living.
Yeah,
I train most of my clients, they have children or grandchildren. And for them, it's being able to specifically be involved in practicing with their sports, whether it's soccer,
Mhm.
lacrosse, baseball, doesn't matter, chasing the rugrats around on the living room floor, like the ability to enjoy some of the things I think people take for granted on a day to day. And a
Yeah.
really good way to test that is, can you bend over to tie your shoe? Do you have to lift your foot up on something? Do you have to sit down and reach over and put your foot up? Do you have to use a shoe horn?
Mhm.
yeah,
Those are generally good telltale signs of quality of life, you know?
hmm
Right.
It
and that's
terrifies me to think, we're all Father Time gets everybody, but it terrifies me to know that if I ever had to put my foot up on a bench to tie my shoe because my visceral fat area was so large that I couldn't do that. So like
Yeah.
start paying attention to things that you're doing that are challenging. And what would it be like if you could do that with ease?
yeah,
And a
Right.
lot of that comes down to, again,
quality
specifically
of life.
focusing on how you're nourishing your body.
I saw this video that you just reminded me of this. There's a viral video of like WrestleMania or something. There was a really long line to get out of WrestleMania on the escalators, but the one escalator that went down, nobody was using that, right? So one guy was trying to run up the down escalator to try to bypass the line. Well, he wasn't fit enough to do it. So he fell and got injured or something like that. And it's like, that's one of those
Mhm.
like quality of life things where if you were stronger, more mobile, better cardiovascular fitness, he could have just ran up the down escalator. That's a really weird use case, but
No, that's actually funny. So when I was at the Oil Classic like 6 years ago in Columbus, the photographer, he was probably in his mid-50s. Everybody at that expo was taking the escalator. He ran up the stairs and he called everybody out. He's like, "We're at a fucking fitness event and you guys are here
Yeah.
taking the
I
escalators."
love
And
that.
I was walking up the
That would be
stairs. I
me.
will admit I
I'd
was
be
walking.
like, "What the fuck?"
He was running up the stairs and just laying into everybody, and it was
Oh, I love that.
hysterical.
The
People hate
escalator at
traveling with me
Caesars up
sometimes
to
because of
the
that.
every time we had because there was no stair. I don't think there was any stairs going up to that section where our
Mm,
so people were on the escalator standing there and I was just walking on the side of them. I'm like, "Come on, move over. Why are you guys fucking standing here? Just walk up the escalator."
Yeah.
yep,
It's like
Huge
we're
pet
like you
peeve of
said,
mine.
we're at a
Huge
fucking
fucking pet
fitness
peeve.
conference. Lazy
yep.
fucks, come on.
Yeah.
Look at the grocery carts in the grocery parking lot. You can't
Yeah.
walk 100 feet and return your cart, like, really?
Well,
That's
show me
So
one
somebody
thing
that does
that
that, doesn't return their car, and it says a lot about their work ethic and character, I think. So, yeah.
I've gotten in massive fights with people on the internet about putting their cart away. When I think I made a video a long
Well, how you
time
do one
ago.
thing is how you do everything.
I'm like, "Put your fucking carts away. Look at this place." The comments, "What if I have my baby with me?" I'm like, I had a baby and I put my cart away. I
Carry
mean,
your
would
baby.
yeah,
don't
like
leverage your child. Don't leverage your child for your
lock the
laziness.
fucking
I know.
door and put
Well,
your
we
cart
love to
away.
blame our children for our laziness
Oh,
as adults. We love to. I've been
yeah,
there, done that. I can call myself out on that.
I can
Um,
too.
that- I-
That's why I drank.
my son
was
is
my reason,
my
right?
kid is not the reason why I can't. Like, that is bullshit to put that on your children, but
Yeah.
I digress. Let's not, I guess, rant about that right now. We've done that just a
Yeah.
few episodes ago, I think. So
I think
There's
there's even
actually
a page. There's isn't there like a grocery
Narcs.
cart narcs? That's it.
Cart narcs.
fucking I got sucked into that for like an hour. It was
Oh my
so
God.
bad. I'm watching every video and he
Or
calls
is it
them
like
lazy
people getting
bones,
shamed
throws
for not
magnets
returning
on
their
their
carts or something?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
And it's
I'm bring back public shaming for shit like that. Absolutely.
it's
Stop the bullshitting
amazing
nature.
that the dialogue. I'm surprised the guy. I mean, I think he's got a gun pulled on him, and I would never do that job because it
No.
seems people are off the rockers. But the amount of excuses that you hear as to why people don't put their carts back after pushing it around the grocery store for the last 30 minutes or an hour grocery
Yeah.
shopping, it's just like it's mind blowing.
Here's a real hack. If you don't want to put your shopping cart away, just park in the back of the parking lot, and then you can just put it back on the way back to walk into your car.
Yeah, 100%.
But they'll never do that.
Yeah,
No. Yeah. Well, awesome. God damn, an hour went by quick.
Absolutely.
that was fast.
That was
We could have
fast.
talked 2 hours.
I know.
Maintenance, especially we're talking about maintenance. That's where life honestly begins. It's not in the fat loss,
Yeah.
right? That's
Correct.
the phase. We like Beth, and we always say like, get in, get the fuck out, and live your fucking life.
Yeah, maintenance is the magic. There's magic in the maintenance phase, right? And
Yeah.
if you've developed that skill set and tool belt, whether you did fat loss or muscle build or a combination of the two, you're going to be able to eat more food. You're going to perhaps be able to feel more comfortable and confident going to social situations, work events, party events, and things of that nature. Consume a little bit more food and feel good about your decisions. So,
Well said.
You're not supposed to live in a calorie deficit, and a lot of people think that their life should be lived in a calorie deficit.
yeah,
That is
No,
bullshit, right?
maintenance
That's
is where it's at.
unsustainable. Maintenance is
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
at. I love that.
Awesome, Polly. Well, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate the
Appreciate
invite.
you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. It was
If
great.
people wanted to find you, follow you, find you in Montana, where can people find Polly?
You can look up thebar406.com. I think I have my Facebook and Instagram handle on the bottom of the page. On social medias, I don't even remember what my name is on there. I think it's like, just look up like Coach Pauly. It's coach.pauly_inc. And,
Okay.
or follow,
We'll tag you in the show notes so people can.
Yeah,
follow you.
yeah.
if you have questions, DM me. I do answer them. Might take me a hot minute to get back to you, but I will respond.
Respect.
Unless it's a sales pitch on how I can improve my social media, which I don't give a fuck about. So don't do
Yeah.
that.
I'll pay you 10 grand if you can help you grow your account.
Yeah.
Oh my
Organically.
God.
Fake
Yeah.
followers.
Yeah.
Right?
There you go.
Oh my God.
Great episode. Great
All
chat
right.
here today.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you guys' time. Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed this episode, so why not share with a friend who needs to hear it? Send us a DM on Instagram or email us at cutthecrappod@gmail.com and join our Patreon at patreon.com/cutthecrappodcast. As always, we appreciate you and thanks for being here.